So in this part, we're going to add in a wandering movement for the enemy. So what will happen is if they're not chasing, then at that point they're going to wander, and the direction that they wander is going to be random, but they'll only move in one of the 4 cardinal directions. So we're going to try and make it so that they don't just wander all jittery and aimlessly. So what we need to do with that is we need to create a new method here to work with, and it won't return anything, so void, and I will just call this wander. So what's going to happen in wander is we're going to say our wander direction will be equal to a random number. That random number will be 0, 1, 2, or 3. So we take random out of 4, and it will give us 0 to 0.3, between 0 and 3.99999. So if we always round down, we get 0, 1, 2, and 3 as our possible options. So we will just write a simple if statement. So if wander direction is equal to 0, curly brace, couple returns, close curly brace, else if wander direction is equal to 1, parenthesis, curly. So you'll see kind of a pattern here. Else if, and you could certainly copy paste this, but what we're trying to do is we're prepping this, and then we're going to put the code inside between the curly braces that we need. And we know that the only possible options are going to be 0, 1, 2, and 3, so we don't have to include a final else statement on this, but we can just simply leave it like this. So we have, when we look at it, we have left, up, right, and down as 4 options here. So, and Vx and Vy. So I'm just going to copy all of that, and then we will keep the parts we want and change the parts we want. So in this first one, I'll put that in. So I want, if our first one is going to be left, so I'll set that to true, like this. So if we're wandering left, then our Vy is going to be 0. And we don't need to say what the Vx is because we already have that in our code. So if move left is true, then our Vx is negative speed, and it says which row to grab in the sprite artwork. So now if we move into our next one and paste that in, so this time I'm just going to work my way down the line. So if we're moving up, that means our Vx, we're not moving horizontally, just our Vx will be 0, just like that. Now we'll repeat this 2 more times. So left, up, right, and then again our Vy is 0. And in our final example, moving down will be true. So that means our x is 0. We don't kill our y, otherwise it doesn't move. So now we have a wander method. So we can tell the sprite to wander. So what's happening is, it updates, and if the distance is close enough that it's going to chase us, then we have it chase us. So if that distance is there, otherwise we just want these to wander. Well, what we can also do is right inside the constructor, we might as well just say wander. And we'll just call our wander method. What we also want to do is we need to, in right here where it's figuring out, so we're either right there, we're chasing, otherwise we're not chasing. Now we don't want to call wander here, because if we called wander, at that point it would just start going in all directions and never really move. So we can try that and see what happens. So you can see where they get a little bit spastic, and we don't really want that. So let's comment that out, run it again. we'll see how so they're chasing us. Oh, and they stopped chasing us and went off screen. All right, so we're fixing a few things here. So again, everything in this else we don't need, so I am going to delete it just to make space. So this is, I'm just going to put a comment here and chase stuff. And put a comment at the beginning, chase stuff. All right, so this is ending at the chase. Now there's our basic movements. We can update our position. What we might also want to do before we update that is probably do a little bit of boundary checking here. So let's do some boundary checking on it. So we need to, instead of having wrapping, I don't want these to wrap, I want them to change direction. But because we're not just using, a fixed speed and working with it like what we've done before, but instead we're changing our directions based on our moves, this is where we're going to need to put in some ifs, which we can just about reuse some of that. So we will reuse, I'm going to just copy, where was that? Oh, well, we can just copy that. That'll give me enough to work with. I deleted what I kind of wanted. All right, so this will be boundary checks. So if, and we can just, let's do all of them and then we'll paste in. So if our x becomes less than 0, now we don't want it to go all the way off screen, we want when it hits the edge. So when it becomes less than 0, at that point, start moving right. Else, if x is greater than with minus w, start moving left. So again, when you're coding, you can actually just kind of describe what you want to have happen and put it in a comment, and then go back and replace that with the code you need. That can be a nice way, instead of having to think about all the stuff you have to put in between those curly braces and losing sight of the bigger picture. And then, now the reality is we can't hit two boundaries at once, but this does take care of our horizontal. So else if our y is now less than 0, move down. Else if our y is greater than the height minus the h. And right in here, this will be move up, because that means we hit the bottom of the screen and we want to start going up. Okay, so now that I've done that, let's go and put some code in here. So if I want to start moving right, well, that will become false. And move right, true. And then at that point, we can just leave, because in case, after it stops chasing, once it stops chasing, then it ends up kind of, it might be moving diagonal, but then once it hits this, we know that left and right, we want our Vy to be 0, so we'll leave that, and move left is true, so start moving left. Now let's go here, we'll change that to an X, and that is not true, that is false, and we want to start moving down, so we look for the appropriate one. So we can see by putting in these comments, it actually makes it much easier for us. So it makes it much easier for us to update what we have there. So now let's run this again. Okay, I'm going to run away. They hit the edge and now they start going. And now we'll see that when they hit the bottom, then they go there. So we might need to adjust that bottom spot because notice they're hitting the very bottom of the whole project. But we have this UI that is telling us what our ammo is there. So that is problematic. Their health bar is going off screen. So if we wanted to be even more exact, we could certainly limit it by that. I'm more concerned about that health bar at the bottom. So then this is, that UI, if I recall correctly, is 40. Again, get them chasing me. Yeah, and now they're bouncing off that bar. So that's good. All right. So we've made it work. I'm going to run off the screen here. We'll leave them up there so it's not so distracting. So once again, we've added in this wandering behavior so that when they're chasing, they're doing that. What we will want to do is in our reset that we have here, because now if let's go and get some more ammo. And now when they respond, get some more ammo here. It's a little bit tricky. And now the respawn. So we're able to let them wander into that new direction when they respawn. Or we haven't done it, so that's why it kept moving in that direction when it spawned. So we can call wander in our reset. Let's try that again. And he happened to just continue in that same direction. And come on. And now we spawned and is going in a new direction. Okay, so we proved it worked. The first time it didn't really affect it because we drew the same random number to the direction it was going, so we couldn't see it. All right, so I apologize for my slow gameplay. Again, I'm better at coding these than I am at playing. But we've been able to set it up so that the enemies are doing some wandering behavior. If we add in lots of enemies, we'll see how that really adds to it. I'm just going to modify it so they don't hurt me for a moment. So let's make it so I don't lose health so the game doesn't end right away. And now add in a bunch of enemies so we can see how that works. So we will go 20 enemies on here instead of, oh no, that's pickups. 20 enemies, there we go. And we can see how they were moving kind of, and then when they hit that wall. So we don't necessarily want them to all just, every time they hit the wall wander in a new direction, because then they'll follow that edge. Could add a timer in so that the enemy has a timer so that after X amount of time wandering, it chooses a new wander direction. You could build that in as well, so you would just have to add in another timer object and then set that timer up. It could be at the main game level, but it also could just be embedded into the enemy class so that you add a timer as something that it has here, and then it keeps track of that. So when that timer spawns, if it is wandering, then it will go. So you could maybe say like every 5 seconds for that enemy. If it's wandering, it fires off and goes into a new direction. So there's always more we can do with it, but again, we're trying to just master some fundamentals and understand how we can put these things together. So good luck and happy coding.